Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Artcasters number 125, and we have guest Mike Emeritz tonight, and as usual, Josh and I are here. And just before we get started, I just want to apologize last time, and maybe for this time as well. Last time I had some real bad audio, and my video has been really bad for I don't know how long, and I'm still trying to figure out that problem. Part of it is my internet speed for some reason is like super slow, even though I'm paying for high-speed internet. So I got to look into all that. But if things don't go smoothly, you know, sometimes what happens if we get cut out or something like that, we'll do like a two-parter, and Josh will pick up the rest on his channel. But so far, as long as the audio sounds good, I'm okay with it, you know. But I do want to try to figure this out, so just bear with me. And having said that, let's kind of get on with the show. So I want to go, as always, to my co-host, Josh. Josh, where can everyone find you?
Well, you can find me at quarterlystories.com, and you can also find my webcomic lingering on Takas.io by searching for Quarterly Stories and adding it to your library there under Quarterly Stories. And you can find me at Joshua Kemble on YouTube. And I think my username on YouTube is Polly Nothing. And you can also find me lurking in the shadows.
And you can find some cool shirts by Josh. I just got one. I know you can't see it that well because my video sucks, but where can I get your shirts, Josh?
Oh, that's right. Society 6, and it'll be linked in the show notes, hopefully.
All right, cool. Yeah, remember to do that. And so you're on my channel, so you probably know who I am, hopefully. Or if you came to me via Josh's channel, maybe you don't, I don't know. But yeah, I'm at Serkworks pretty much most places on the internet, still doing the Martial Robots Challenge. Just wrapped up the first sort of month of the challenge that I started with Marshall Lee, which is the Take Me to Your Leader Tuesday. So we've got videos on there. That hashtag is still going to continue to go, and hopefully I'll still be doing those alien drawings every Tuesday. But as far as the videos, well, I'll probably be moving on to other stuff. But feel free to take that hashtag and that concept and that challenge and run with it. And so tonight we're talking about, and this is something that, you know, I wanted to have Mike on. I haven't talked to Mike in a little while, and he's doing some stuff, some interesting things as far as kind of taking his artwork to the next level, pushing himself, kind of trying to, you know, basically do what pro comic book artists rather are doing, which sounds really cool. So I want to talk to Mike about that. So first of all, Mike, before we get into that, let everyone know where they can find you and everything and what you're up to.
Sure. Well, you can find me at spacecatcomics.com. Right now that links to my store, and then from my store you'll get links to all my social media and stuff. So like Instagram, Facebook, here on YouTube, and all that kind of jazz. And that's pretty much it. Right now I'm kind of I'm going to be starting a video series on YouTube soon, which I'm guessing that's kind of what we're going to segue into at some point. But it's going to be like a week as a comic pro. So that's kind of what I got going on right now, is gearing up to start that soon. So yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I guess before we get into that, I don't know. I mean, I'm curious. I don't know anyone else that kind of follows the 100 Days of Making Comics anthology. Guess I'm curious where that is right now. I mean, I know you've been having a heck of a time with Lamb.
Yeah, that's been something else. Yeah, we had some hangups, just communication problems with the printer pretty much, but we finally, as of yesterday, I finally paid the official invoice. So we're all paid up. They're starting to follow through and get all the printing done. The other printer that we're getting the posters done, they've already printed, and the hard copy proofs are coming my way within like the next couple days. So realistically, we're honestly looking at about I'd say about the earliest, probably 2 weeks from now, we're going to start shipping out books. That was the hard, like, official date that I was given from the printers, that they're going to start getting those orders together within the next 2 weeks. So Yeah, huge relief there.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's got to be a load off your mind or your back or whatever.
Oh yeah, all of it.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to speak for everyone. I just want to thank you for all the work that you've done on that.
No problem. Thank you.
So that being said, so now we all know where that is. So now that you've got some time, because you're not dealing with these printer issues and everything, now you have time to focus on your comic book. And it sounds like you're really going to go full bore into that. Is that the phrase?
Yeah. Full bore to the core, something like that. Yeah, I actually I got super inspired by doing the short comic for the anthology. And it was like immediately after that, I was in this kind of zone where like I just wanted to get on with something else immediately after. And I kind of did. But because of all the extra responsibilities of the Kickstarter and organizing all the printing and stuff, I really got just kind of hung up with all of that. So I had to kind of delay it. And as I'm sure you guys have talked about a bunch on this show, and especially when I'm on, you talk a lot about like how to maintain momentum and stuff. And like, losing momentum is the worst way to maintain momentum. It's like you spend a few days and it's like it's a lot easier to spend another day and to spend another day and so on. And so I was just in a place where it was like, all right, I got all these goals. Everything is starting to kind of wrap up now. So, you know, I don't really want to do another 100 days of making comics because I did it 4 times now. And I know I can do 30 minutes a day. That's not the problem at all. But what I need to do for the goals that I have is I need to do a lot more. Like realistically, if I want to make comics my living, I have to be able to do 8 hours a day. And I know that that's kind of a crazy thing and it's not, you know, everybody's cup of tea, but I genuinely want to make it so that comics specifically, not just art, but just me making comics is, you know, what I make my living at. And if that's what I really want, then 30 minutes a day just isn't going to cut it. You know, that was kind of my attitude going into this year was like, I got to really kick it up a notch. And so I've been following Jim Lee's channel a lot, and he's been doing a lot of live broadcasts like while he's working, which is freaking amazing. Like you could stare over Jim Lee's shoulder, you know, during a work day, and like he's taking breaks and eating on the stream and everything too. So, like you get a very realistic perspective of like what it's like to be Jim Lee working on a comic page. Which, I mean, he's a master and he's got like over 30 years of experience doing just comics. So naturally, his day is going to go a lot quicker than, you know, the average bear. But still, it gave me some perspective. Like, you know, if this is what you want to do, like you got to work like Jim, or at least try to, at least like, you know, in the same vein where it's like get up, make your coffee, eat your breakfast, you know, exercise or whatever else you got to do that's important, but then sit down and get to work and don't get up until you're finished pretty much, you know? And so I didn't want to be Jim Lee, but I wanted to do something like that. So I made myself kind of like this thing that I call the Jim Lee Boot Camp Challenge. And so I'm pretty much going to spend like 8 to 10 hours a day. And the whole idea is like, can I even do this? You know, I love making comics. I've made comics for years. It's something that I really enjoy, but I've never really treated it like a job. I've treated it like, I wouldn't say a hobby because it's definitely more of a passion. It's something I try to make as much time as possible for, but it's like, I've never really forced myself to treat it like a job and sit down and go to work for that whole day. I'm always filling it up with something else. Like if I get lost on a little drawing, that'll be my day. I'll spend 3 hours to do a drawing and be okay with that. And then just work on my comic with whatever time I've got, you know, but if I want to put issues out regularly, I have to go to work every day. So I kind of made it a little easy on myself because some of Jim's advice for people that are kind of wanting to do what he's doing, he talked about how he kind of got started, and he said that he would just sit down and just try to draw for 8 hours a day. He's like, I haven't even done that. I haven't got to a point where I can sit down and just draw for 8 hours a day. So let me see what that's like, you know? And so that's kind of where I'm going to start. Like the goal is to just keep my hands moving for at least 8 hours a day. And I'm going to try and focus it purely on comic work. But if I'm blocked or, you know, it's not happening, then I'm going to immediately just whip out a piece of paper and start drawing on that, like just to get in that habit, you know? So Yeah, I mean that's pretty much it as far as the challenge goes. I'm gonna try and do it for a week, just because everything. Anytime you can do something in a smaller increment, it feels a little easier to do. If I just say like, oh, from here on out, I'm gonna do 8 hours a day, it'd probably be a little overwhelming at first, and I might not follow through on that challenge. But if it's just a week, I feel like I can psych myself out and say like, it's just a week, keep going. You're almost done. You got 4 days left or whatever. Just push it. And then once this week is over with, if you really hated it, then you know what? Don't do it, but at least do it for this week, which is kind of the same thing as the 100 days, right? Like once you get done with the 100 days, that's just your life now. There's no like, it's not like you even want to break. It's like you're working on your stuff all the time. At least that's how it tends to be for most people.
Yeah, and I think you touched on a couple of things that are really important. I think regardless of like even comics aside, like when I first went full-time freelance, I feel like I was kind of lucky because I had like a year's experience, a little over a year, like about 2 years of experience, like working for an education company for 8 hours a day,
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you're under the gun, you're forced to draw like on command, whether you like it or not. And the whole time, and I've talked to creatives, like most creatives when they're in-house, they pretty much every job they're at, they're like, okay, this is the day where I'm going to get fired, because it's like you're asked to do something you don't even know you can do. And that's just kind of a daily occurrence. So like the nice thing was by the time I quit and just went full-time freelance, like I had built this habit of like going and clocking in at a job. So like the idea of sitting and drawing for like 8 hours straight, like while it was hard, like the first week, I think I slacked off a lot, but really quickly when you see, when that's your financial, like what you rely on, like for your income, you see that income starting to drop really quick.
Yeah.
And so it's like that fear almost like drives you to like draw like 16-hour days,
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I got into freelance, was like I would work like 16-hour days for like 7 days a week for like the first 2 years. So I established myself and had built clients and stuff. But it's like I couldn't have done that doing just 30 minutes a day. Like that wouldn't cut it. And so, even with the comic that I'm doing now, it's like 30 minutes is kind of the minimum, but like for me, it's like I probably put in at minimum like 3 hours usually, because that's just like comics take forever. And I think that's just kind of, so like the idea, to me, the idea of being like, if you can spend 8 hours a day, if you have 8 hours to spend, or you can carve those 8 hours for like a week, do it. Like, why wouldn't you be doing that? Like to me, that's awesome. And I can't even imagine like how much you'd get done, because if I had 8 straight hours to sit down, I'd probably finish a page.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing too. Like I totally understand that not everybody has that situation where they can spend 8 hours. So it's not even necessarily like a criticism of anybody. It's more or less like whatever time you do have. If it's 3 hours, that you have a day and you're not using that to its fullest, like that's a good area to do some work. Like look at that and find a way that you can pull the most out of that time.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, yeah.
Everyone, I mean, a lot of people, and I'm always skeptical when people say, I don't have time to do this or whatever. And you may not have 8 hours. You may not have 2 hours. I'll be fine 1 hour in their day, no matter what they do. I mean, I've got a busy day, but if I need to, I can carve out, that time. And again, like you mentioned, it's that repetition. If you can create a habit out of it, if you set that's the whole idea behind the 100 Days of Making Comics. And again, 30 minutes isn't a lot of time, but something that can get you in that habit. And then once you do, then maybe you can up that challenge to an hour. And then if you can, up it a little more. But it's just it's carving out that time, and everyone has that time. If you really sit down and you analyze your day, and you can you can see all the time that you're wasting in almost any case, no matter what you're doing.
Yeah, and
I mean, right now it seems like I'm like super busy, but if I really sat down, I'm sure I could find a little extra time.
Yeah, and I think that like to tack onto that too, it's like, you know, you'll see these videos of like to me, what's always inspiring is looking at people who have it way worse and still manage to make the time. Like people are like disabled and yet they manage to like hit the gym for like 2 hours a day and get huge. Like, you know, like there's usually time, and there are some situations where it's just like not going to be the case. Like, you know, if you have to like undergo chemotherapy, then great. You probably don't have time. But, you know, like in most cases, most people who say they don't have time, there's, you know, at least in my own case, I found like that's just the go-to excuse. Even when I hear the 8 hours a day, I instantly am like, well, that would be nice, you know? But at the same time, it's like, you know, it depends, because like I said, you know, when I went freelance, I remember a lot of people, and I did that for 15 years pretty effectively, you know, as like the breadwinner in, you know, with my fiance at the time. And like, so I paid like the biggest chunk of the rent, I paid most of our bills, you know, and that was all art. And I remember doing that and people being like, well, that would be nice. I'd love to quit my job and go freelance. And I always felt like, well, why don't you? Like, if you really want to quit and go freelance, then quit and go freelance. Like, because your conditions aren't going to be perfect. And it's the same thing where it's like, if you sincerely like believe that you can make it in comics, if you spend 8 hours a day to do comics, then spend 8 hours a day to do comics. Like, I think that's brilliant. And then if you're in a situation where you can, that's even better, you know? And if you're in a situation where you can't, then you got to think like, well, how do I make a situation where I can?
Exactly. Yeah. I've got limited time too. It's not like this is like a magic thing where like I got infinite, you know, time to figure this out. Like I have a hard deadline for when I have to figure this out. Otherwise, I got to figure out something else. And that terrifies me. I don't want to do that. I've been there before. I know the things that I could go back to doing, and that's fine. I could excel at it and make money, and that's great, but I'd be miserable. So it's like, that's my motivation right now, is like, no, I don't want to go back. Not that. Got to make this work.
Yeah.
You know,
sometimes that do or die situation, what a lot of people need, it's scary, but I mean, yeah, sometimes that gives you the drive, you know?
Yeah. And it wouldn't be so terrible, but you know, I would rather be doing something that I love, and I know that there's enough time for me to figure out a way to make it work. Like I think I'm already fairly like, at least like decent at it. I know I'm not the best, and I know I got a lot to learn, but I think I've shown that it's not something that I'm like so terrible at that I should like throw in the towel, you know? So that's kind of the motivation, is like, you know, it's worth it. It's worth trying, you know? And then if it doesn't work, then it'll be a little bit easier to take that blow. It'll be like, well, you know what? You did the absolute best that you possibly could. And I'll be able to look back at that, and I can legitimately say that. I could say, yeah, like I tried working 8 hours a day every day, and you know what? I just can't. It's not something that I'm cut out for, you know? Maybe it turns out that like, hey, yeah, this is wonderful. Look at this. I'm getting even more work done now that I'm more focused and, you know, disciplined and stuff. I don't know, but either way, like, I think to kind of tie it into the topic a little bit, like, pushing yourself and failing it's a lot easier to take that failure, I feel like, because I've done some things that I've given up in the past where it's like, I know I didn't try hard enough. I really know that I didn't try hard enough, and it stings, you know, because you feel, at least in the back of your mind during that time, that's like, you still have that feeling like, oh, well, I could have, if only X, Y, and Z, I could have, you know. But the things that I've tried my hardest and failed at, it's a lot more graceful failure. It's like easier to accept and move on. So there's that aspect to it too. I don't want to, you know, forsake this time and get to the end and feel like there was more that I could have done. I don't like that feeling at all.
No, and I think that's, I think you're touching on so many important things. It's like, one is like, you know, the other thing, I feel like we're in a culture, and I think it's changing a bit, but I feel like we're in a culture that really doesn't like look at failure. So like when there's a story about an artist, you know, like that's been working for like 25 years and they finally have something that breaks, they'll be like, debut artist, like, you know, it's always like a first, and they never, like, rarely is it mentioned like the 50 attempts that failed before.
Yeah.
And like, and I think that as an artist, it's like really, you know, you're gonna face failure at some point. And so there's a couple ways you can face it. One is you can go full bore and really fail and then learn. Because I don't think you learn from failures where you aren't making a sincere attempt, you know?
Yeah, that's true.
But like the worst case scenario from like what you're talking about is like you fail and you learn. And then you learn for the next time. And then maybe you fail that time too. You know, that's your worst case scenario, which is not a bad scenario.
No.
But it's like to me, like for instance, like, and I've talked about this, like I'm not really a big proponent of like full-time freelance anymore. I haven't met a lot of people that enjoy their lives doing that. There's occasional people who do, but like, you know, I also think like when I talk to young artists who are fearful of that, who've never done it, I always think they should, because of the fact that there is the possibility that maybe it does align for them. And then aside from that, like it did so much for my career in a positive way that I did freelance for as long as I did. Like I would not have the portfolio I have today if I had stayed safe and worked for a corporation. I'd have a portfolio of stuff that I wouldn't be able to put online, that I'd be saying like, made by this company, contributed by this other artist, you know, like, because usually it's like a team endeavor when you're making in-house art.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like,
I would.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna. I don't know, it's devil's advocate, but counter kind of what you're saying. At least in my situation, because I know, like with my full-time job, and I guess past couple full-time jobs I've had, I think I've like the job I'm at right now because I'm drawing so, and it is a different situation because I'm not in a sort of thing. You know, we have a number of illustrators, but we're pretty much on our own. We do our own designs and everything. But because I'm working on so many different styles and everything, it's really helping me improve because I'm drawing things that I haven't drawn before, and I'm getting better at that. Where if I'm just doing, well, I guess if I'm doing freelance, that could be the same too, because you with. But if I was just kind of doing my own thing, I wouldn't be drawing, doing it work. So I wouldn't be getting better at those things because some of the things may not be just things that I would choose to draw, but knowing how to draw them, it's always good, because when you do comics, you have to draw everything. You know, if there's a script, or I mean, if you write your own scripts and stuff, sometimes you can say, well, I don't want to draw that, so I'm not going to write it. But that's not always the case. So if you, at least in my situation, went back when I worked in game design, and now that I'm working in designing stuff for paper products and things like that, it's really helped me improve because I'm just drawing different things. But I know that's sort of an ideal situation because that's not always the case when you're working full time as an artist for a company. And I know like illustration jobs in general aren't that easy to come outside of maybe game design, but.
Yeah, and I think like that is a good point, and I wouldn't even disagree with that, because I think that like even those 2 years that I was doing the education company, it's like I had no comprehension of Illustrator. I kind of lied my way in and said I knew Illustrator, and then I just sat next to a senior designer and just learned like every shortcut they were doing, like what keys are you hitting, and forced myself to learn all the shortcuts. So by the time I went to freelance, I had all that benefit from working in-house, where it's like there's also the collaborative benefit of like if you want to. Sorry, what?
I was going to say that, so I'm glad you brought it up. There's other artists around you instead of kind of working, you know, solitary.
Oh
yeah, that's actually. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You learn those programs like back and forth better than you ever would, because you're forced to like also in-house. Usually deadlines are a lot tighter, so it's like you really have to learn Illustrator. Like, you can't just half-ass Illustrator. So like within the first week, I was using Pathfinder, which is like a go-to. And if you learn Illustrator, learn Pathfinder, because it'll spare your files from being ridiculous. And like, there's just
Pathfinder all the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's like your best friend, but like you wouldn't know that if you're working like solo. You might spend all this time building these really complicated things that when you send to an in-house crew, which is a lot of who you're going to be freelancing for, like full, you know, that you'll be freelancing for art teams, and then when they get the files, they're going to be like, what is this nonsense? Because it's like, it's beautiful looking, but like it's got 50 billion layers and they have to dissect it. It's a nightmare. So there are things that you really, that there are valuable things to both, but my point is just like, for those people who like really desire like the freelance life, they should experience the freelance life. And then if it's for them, great. If it's not, they'll appreciate the full-time life a lot better. And they'll build more personal work. But you know, we've already talked about it. I'm more on the side of like, I find that I have more time for work I care about now in the situation I'm in than I did when I was freelance. And we've talked about that ad nauseum. I think, Scott, we're kind of on the same page with that, right?
Yeah.
So, but it is one of those things of like, I do feel like you do have to go full bore. Like, if you ever want to do it, there's never going to be an ideal situation where like somebody's like, here's a 401k, here's your benefits, freelance. Like, nobody's going to do that for you, you know?
No, that doesn't happen.
So it's one of those things of like similarly, like you know, honestly, if I really wanted to do superhero comics, and I'm not meaning this in a negative way, like it's just, if that were a real desire of mine to do that for a living, I would probably be approaching it exactly like what you're talking about, Mike. And I'm not saying you want to do superhero comics. I'm just saying if what I desired to do was a comic that I felt had more commercial viability, I would be hitting that like full bore.
Yeah, it is in a way, because like, you know, you made a lot of points actually that I wanted to touch on, but to that point, you know, I do want to work for bigger companies. Like I've learned that about myself, that I think that my skill set is best used in service of other people. That's not to say that I don't enjoy telling my own stories and that I don't want to tell my own stories. I definitely do. And in the perfect scenario, my stories are going to be beloved by enough people that I can make a living. But, you know, that's the dream, you know, and I'm going to do whatever I can to work towards that. But realistically, I gotta work. I gotta appeal to other people that want to spend their hard-earned money on art that I make for their book, you know. And to do that, like, I gotta get experience. And you know, the best way that I could think is to just sit down and nose to the grindstone, just start cranking out pages, just tons and tons of pages, as many as I possibly can. And even if it's not the greatest work, it should at least be adequate. It should at least be. It should look like someone who knows what they're doing, even if what they're doing isn't the best that's out there, you know, and that I can do it in a timely fashion, so that, because I don't want to just go and look for work at random right now. Like, I feel like I'm at a point where I can make a good enough comic, but I don't want to take someone's money and then say, all right, well, it'll get done when it gets done. I'll call you, you know, hopefully sometime soon. You know, I want to know how long it's going to take me. And that's sort of the disadvantage of to kind of go with what you were saying before about approaching this from, you know, as a lone wolf, rather than having worked in a studio or a company that's doing this kind of thing and learning from there, which, you know, I could speak from kind of both perspectives, because I have a lot of experience doing freelance work in film and television. I wish that I would have spent that time, you know, doing illustration though, since that's where I wound up. But, you know, working with other people, that's where you really learn. That's where you learn your biggest weaknesses. That's where you learn your biggest strengths. And that's when you learn a whole ton of stuff that you just can't learn on your own, you know. But to counteract that, I feel like you kind of have to do something similar to what I'm doing now, where like you really just need to put in more time, because regardless of whether you're working with people or not, at least you're putting in time. At least you're learning your own solution. So it might not be the best solution, but it's still a solution. It's not something that you're going to get hung up on and that's going to prevent you from getting the job done, you know?
Yeah, and I think like to tack on too, it's not like even that first in-house gig didn't just magically fall on my lap. Like that came from like I was going to school full time and doing college assignments, which a lot of people just, that's all they do. And then I was working full time, and then I'd spend about 4 to 5 hours a day working on my own portfolio work that had nothing to do with assignments. Mm-hmm. And so like by the time I was out of college, I had like a personal portfolio, which gave me a huge advantage because I already had a style, I already had a look, I already had like a developed portfolio. So I was able to get a job because of the fact that I had that. So it's like, it really is a matter of time investment. And for those of you who like might follow me on YouTube, it's like, you'll know I'm not a fast artist at all. It takes me a long time to do stuff. So like, and I've talked about this before, but it's like I know so many people who draw faster than me. So the one thing I have over most people is I'm really stubborn. And so I just spend more time. And that's always been my trick is like, I'll spend more time and that's how I'll add up to these other guys, you know? And honestly, it's weird because I felt really isolated in that until I met other artists. And then I realized maybe I'm not spending more time. I think that's the trick. I think it just takes a lot of time. And I suspect I haven't even seen the Jim Lee thing, but I bet he probably spends more time than you would imagine, even though he is like a master. I would imagine it's still pretty time consuming.
Oh, yeah.
Although he looks like he is pretty quick, but you know, I don't know. Like, did he kind of put more time than you imagined he would?
You know, it wasn't necessarily the time that blew me away, but it was just how he worked. Like, he just works and reworks things until he's happy with them. And that alone was a huge eye-opener, you know, because we kind of imagine the people that we look up to just kind of throw some lines down and it's all perfect. But to see him really like throw something so loose down and then take hours to go and work it into something that even, you know, looks close to what you would expect from him was the real eye-opening thing and the inspiring thing for me. And I guess it did take more time than I thought that it would. And to see how he uses his time, like he really does do the old the kind of trick of finding one panel that's going to be amazing and putting all of your time into that and then just quickly going through the rest of them like that. Getting to see that in action really puts things into perspective too. Like it really is a matter of picking your battles in a sense and knowing how to spend that time so that you don't use more than you even need to, you know, like if it's going to be some long shot with like some silhouetted characters, like you don't need to spend a whole lot of time detailing all those little things. Like you just need the gist of it. And, you know, depending on who you're working with too, that's another big factor. Inkers can kind of pick up the slack if they're good and, you know, that you can work well with them. And there's all these other little considerations that you don't really necessarily think of if you're just kind of stuck in your head doing your own thing. And I was definitely like that. I definitely have had my eyes opened recently. And yeah, time management is a huge thing, a real huge thing. It's going to change the way that I even write my comics now. Like the way that I write has always been very kind of, I don't know, my pages are just meant to be read. I never really thought about things in terms of highlighting like a specific panel or a specific moment or anything like that. I've always just thought of it like beat by beat by beat. And so now it's got me even thinking in a different direction for how to compose the pages, which, you know, they read differently, but it also dramatically affects the time it takes to make them. And it's just, all these little things, you know, and I won't actually fully learn them and understand them until I've done them. Like it's one thing to watch and, you know, have an aha moment. It's a whole other thing to like put it into practice. And so that's kind of what I'm hoping to do with that week as a pro, which is probably going to turn into another week after that and another week after that. I mean, I hope it's not something that I burn out, you know, in 1 week. It's something that I want to keep trying to do.
I think that's right, and I think that I think that hopefully it results in like in pro. I mean, like, so I always name drop this book, and I really can't name drop it enough. But there's this book, The War of Art, and that's one of the like, you really don't earn the right to call yourself a writer unless you're writing on a daily basis.
Yeah.
I'm really convicted by that. Like, if I didn't draw or work on my comic today, I can't call myself a cartoonist. Like, I didn't earn it today. And that's my own thing. Like, maybe that doesn't work for some people who maybe don't, like, maybe some people's struggle might be too much kind of self-doubt and too much self-criticism, and maybe that wouldn't work. But for me, that works because I want to call myself a cartoonist. And so that alone makes me want to work on cartooning on a daily basis. And but I feel like you touched on something really cool, which was Jim Lee kind of going through reworking. And this is something when I used to teach graphic design and stuff that I'd always say to my students, and I don't know who this quote came from, but it's like, you really don't get better at anatomy. You never do. You never really get better at anatomy. You just get better at catching your mistakes and knowing how to fix them.
Nice.
So it's like, you'll see somebody who's like a seasoned artist. There's a couple guys that just seem to just get amazing and don't make mistakes. But the majority of masters you can see, like when they're laying down a portrait, they make a lot of false lines to get to the right ones. They just get better at figuring out which ones are false lines. Like, okay, you know, and better at figuring out cheats, like drawing a through line on a face, which for some reason, even the best of artists that I see constantly forget to do. Like,
I don't draw a face without through lines.
Yeah. And it's like your eyes will always be like, one will be too low and one will be too high. If you it's a telltale, and it doesn't matter how good an artist is. Like like 95% of the time, no through line means off eyes, and it's just like, you draw enough off eyes and you get more seasoned. It's not like you got better at drawing eyes in alignment. You just remember, like, yeah, every time I don't draw a through line, my eyes look weird.
Mm-hmm.
So it is one of those things of like, I don't know if you acquire skill so much as acquire taste to know when you've erred, and you acquire knowledge to know quicker when you've erred, or quicker ways to avoid making that error that you innately will make if you just follow your heart, you know?
Yeah. Just kind of like accepting your own inadequacies and just giving in to using the tools that have been taught to you.
I mean, I remember, like, in graduate school, some guys that were struggling with writing a thesis, which is a nightmare. Like like when you write your final, like, like, you have to write this big paper, right? And a lot of them were really overwhelmed until I just kind of broke it down for them. And not that I nailed it, but I've always been pretty good at writing essays. And the only trick I have that other people didn't when it came to essays was just like following a really basic structure, which was like, you have a thesis, you have 3 supporting facts, and you have a conclusion that sort of repeats the thesis. And that can apply to the longest, like, academic paper in the world. You just kind of extend those 3 to subcategories, you know? And if you keep with that structure and you can kind of write okay, you can write a really solid argument, you know? Whereas, like, I'm just using that as an example. It's like, it's not like people become better writers either. I think you just become better at coming up with structures that enable you to write better.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
Like plot structures. I mean, like, you talked about that a lot on your 100 Days, like how you kind of work through these arcs, and like you have like a structure, and then you start simplifying that structure as you go. Yeah. And you learn better ways by like trying it and being like, well, that didn't work, or that took too long, you know?
It's amazing what a structure can do. You can, I used to kind of have like a game that I would play. I guess it was kind of like a party game. I don't know. Like end of high school, early on in college, I was doing a lot of writing at that time. At that point in my life, I was convinced that I was just going to be a writer, and I had to, have these other careers kind of just as a a fallback kind of thing. But I'd learned about all these different structures, and I would play around with it when I would meet new people, and especially in like group settings where I would just come up with all kinds of little non sequiturs to kind of insert into these structures to just tell these ridiculous stories, and they always worked. Like, it's just the magic of structure. It always works. You can plug anything in, and if you want someone to laugh, they're going to laugh. If you want them to go, oh, they're going to go, oh. And it's pretty amazing. Story is a lot simpler, I think, than a lot of people make it out to be in terms of making it make sense. I think the hard part is that thing that kind of comes with time, and that's learning, is this actually good though? Like, am I actually saying anything? Is this truly new or entertaining or whatever, or is it just working because of the structure? Like, which is fine too. I love a good, just corny, regular old story that doesn't have a whole lot of meaning in it. Just get me from A to B, have a villain in the middle up to no good or something. I love that too. But yeah, that's a really good point about story. I kind of imagine art must be similar. I'm still on a quest to try to figure out what that structure is. I have a feeling it's the fundamentals, which myself, I always tend to avoid. Like, it's something that I've played with now and then that I should just sit down and like kind of take myself back to school. But sometimes I wonder, like, if I would just get sucked in learning forever, because it feels like with art, it's a little different. Like that, it's not a foundation that's as easy to build, I think.
Well, and I think I think regardless, it requires a lot of failure, and then you just kind of get better, and you're like, oh, okay, I can do that better this way. And like I've found through my experience, it's usually like through failure in like trying other ways that I end up arriving at the good old way that has existed forever,
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just one of those things. Like, I don't know. Like, what about you, Scott? Do you feel like you've gotten better at figuring out when you're like, oh, I know that error I'm about to make?
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely pick out and not everything, but I mean, I can see a lot of mistakes I made, and even like page I'm working on now, I can see things and certain things I kind of let go just because I want to put this thing out, and certain things, if it's really bad, then rework it and everything. But I mean, there's certain things I can see where I'm doing it wrong, but there's a lot. I mean, it's almost like, do I put the work out or do I spend a whole lot of time? I mean, I really should be spending more time, like putting some time aside every day to work on gestures, work on, whatever perspective, or, to improve my skills and things like that, because there's a lot of things I still need to work on. But it's almost like I think I forego that just to, get the work out, the time to improve. And I don't work a lot in the sketchbook and that type of thing, but I think I am getting better, or, as time goes on, I am kind of able to kind of pinpoint things that I'm doing wrong and fix those things. So
yeah, and I think like there's this balance, right, with striving for perfection or whatever. Like, you want to push yourself harder, but like my band right now, we're recording a demo, and there's like a track that I really like that we tracked out live, and like I could recut the guitar where it's like perfect and I hit every note, or I could leave it a little raw where I kind of fudge a note here or there. And like, to me, I always prefer when I hear a band, if there's like, a guitarist who kind of doesn't hit all the notes. Like, there's a certain level of perfection in music that just gets boring. And then there's a level of like semi-perfection that to me almost feels more perfect, where there's a rawness to it, and like a kind of clunky, like even why I like hand done type. Like, you can do a font that's going to do your type a lot better, but I love the fact that like when you hand do type, like there's just one little wiggle, you screw up a letter. There's something beautiful about that, and I guess what I'm getting at is like, the nice thing is, I think with more experience too, you allow yourself to kind of let errors sit. Like you know, so that I kind of like, and you can be comfortable with them. But the neat thing is at least you can recognize them. So like if you got a critique and somebody was like, hey, that, you know, perspective's a little off, you could go, yeah, yeah, it is, you're right. You know, and be like comfortable with, but you know, I'm gonna leave it that way. As opposed to being like, when I was a young artist, I remember like drawing faces and just being like, why are my eyes off? Like something looks weird on the eye. I don't know what it is. Something about this face looks weird. And looking back at like a portraits I used to draw, like the eyes were literally just like the left eye was like way lower than the right eye, you know? And it's like, oh, it's because I made a like weird cyclops where their eyes were like, but like I couldn't recognize it. So I just draw and get frustrated, you know, because you couldn't see. And I guess that's what I'm getting at is like, for me, like now I can at least see it, you know? And so if you can see it, then you know to correct it, and then you learn tricks to correct quicker, you know? Yeah. At least for me, that's what, you know, because if I sit down today and just draw a face without a through line, it's still going to have that problem. Like, it's not like I've gotten better with that. I mean, I can guesstimate it a little better because I can anticipate it, you know? But I think you just get, for me at least, I've found I get better at anticipation and correction. But the only way you get better at that is by making a lot of mistakes, you know? I don't know. And I still have go-tos where I'm like, maybe I should refresh. Like, especially drawing shrubbery is like a real problem for me. Like drawing leaves and stuff like that. Yeah. It's really hard to figure. I still don't think I've arrived at a way to kind of simplify that I like, you know?
Yeah, I've got a way that I do it. It seems like look the same no matter what. There's no variation in different kinds of bushes and things. It's kind of all the same. You know, yeah. I got trees, and then I've got, I mean, it looks a little different when I go close up. You know, I'll spend a little more time. Like if it's more in the foreground, but my leaves and things kind of look the same. And I'm not too crazy about it, but I guess it's just, you know, that's the way I do it. I was about to say that's just my style, but you know, I don't know that it's bad, but it's, you know, I've seen so many people draw some really cool leaves and bushes and things like that. So same thing with rocks, you know. I know people draw really awesome rocks, but
oh yeah, I was on a rock kick for a little while trying to learn how to draw them better, and I came up with some pretty neat stuff, but it was all kind of painterly, and it wasn't anything that I could really replicate with ink. And so it was like, yay, but kind of useless for me, unless like
I used to love
did it in color or something.
I used to love George Perez's rocks. He would like, and kind of, I guess. Will Eisner used to do a lot of that, where he would work type into the illustration and stuff. But I remember, I guess that I was aware of George Perez before I kind of discovered Eisner. But I just remember he would, you know, make these giant like titles out of rocks and stuff, and it's just, you know, I always thought that was cool.
Yeah, and it's like, yeah. So I think it's one of those things of like you're probably never going to get to a point where like you draw everything perfect, you know, like, and it's funny because like there's some prominent like illustrators that I really like that draw like these beautiful landscapes and beautiful like cars and vehicles and animals, and then they draw people, and their people look like a generic like airplane catalog, you know. But like it works for what their subject matter is. But it's one of those things where I think like as an artist, it's like you got to target like specific, like, you know, even using comics as a medium to like learn, whereas like you target a different challenge each time. So it's like this page I'm going to try creating paneling. This page I'm going to really focus on doing a close-up if you're weak at close-ups, or like a portrait if you're weak at portraits, or I'm really weak at perspective, so I'm going to do a 3/4 perspective panel, you know.
Yep. Yeah.
Or I'm really weak at shrubbery, so I'm going to do a full, you know, scene in a forest, you know? Like, you can kind of use almost like your weaknesses as a format to learn. And to me, that works way more effectively than a sketchbook, because my personality, Scott, you and I are wired in this similar way, where it's like, I really like print. I like finish. And like, I work way more effectively if I have a goal. You know, whereas like
Oh,
A
yeah.
sketchbook for me is tough because I know there's growth goals in a sketchbook, but it's almost like, to me, it feels too much like playing at making art. And don't get me wrong, I know artists are like, sketchbooks are art in themselves and they're these beautiful things. But for me, I really need that project to force me to get better.
Yeah, definitely. I feel the same way. I've turned making a sketchbook into a project though, because I wasn't keeping them enough. So this year, at the beginning of the year, I actually started this thing where I was going to do a page a day in my sketchbook, and it didn't have to be anything, too polished or anything like that. I just wanted to finish a page a day, and I did. I've stopped because I've ran out of. I finished one. I finished a whole sketchbook, and I don't have another one. So now I need to order another one. So that kind of put the kibosh on that plan. But no, I totally agree with what you were saying about make a project to focus on something that you need to work at. And that's what all of my comics have been so far, and that's what this one is too. I'm tackling things that I'm bad at, and it can be really frustrating sometimes because it's not going as quickly as you'd like, but I feel like I do learn from each one of them, and even though it's a bit of a struggle, like right now I'm doing this insane perspective grid that's probably going to take the whole time that we're doing the show just to lay this stupid grid down, but I've never done a shot like this, and I want to. And I'm not that great when it comes to foreshortening and stuff. I'm really good in like the sketchy phase of coming up with the idea for it and getting it down really roughly, but like refining it and executing it in a way that they don't look like weird sludgy monster people, that I'm not that great at. But I'm choosing these big panels to try to pull off these shots, and having watched Jim Lee now, it's like, well, you know what? If you get it wrong, erase it and do it again. Like, there's no one has to know about it. Just do it, So yeah, I'm all about the challenges tied to different projects. I feel like you're more apt to complete it when it's like that. If I'm just screwing around in my sketchbook, that's all it ever is. I end up getting bored and I'll get sucked into Facebook or YouTube or watching a movie or something in no time. But if there's like a challenge attached to it,
Yeah, or
makes a big
default twos, like I do have, I have friends who have beautiful sketchbooks, but I also have friends who just like default to like the same go-to character or whatever.
Yep,
it's
or
like
the same pose.
And it's like, so that's the I don't know, but to me, I think it all ties into the idea of just going full bore and just jumping in, because you're, like, once again, if you want to see if you can work for 8 hours a day on art, work for 8 hours a day on art.
Yeah.
You want to see if you can draw, I think safe is just not really necessarily the best way to approach art. Now, I also wouldn't jump in like a fool, like
right.
anything, meaning like do a little reading before you try to tackle drawing a hand. Like, there's specific tips that have been learned throughout hundreds of years that, like, you can look at, even just hints in sketchbooks of like the masters, or like, for me, like, like even thinking about shrubbery, it's like when I look at like Albrecht Dürer, that guy could draw any texture and get it to just translate in an ink style, right? So like, look at Dürer, like, look at guys who've come before and learn a little bit from them before you like jump in, just, but at the same time, like, you can't be too timid with art, because it's kind of a, I don't know, it's like when somebody's being precious with something, it translates into art when somebody's being too precious with something,
Yeah, I won't. I just was going to address a couple things in the chat since we're kind of on that. We were talking Holly Brown's in the chat. She said that she's been using foliage brushes, which, I mean, definitely, I mean, that's one of the main pluses with working digital. I mean, there's things that can help you so much with that, with just like the kind of the random. I've seen people that use those and they really are effective. So I'm considering. I don't know. I know this is a little off topic, but in case anyone's not aware, they just announced the new iPad. I've been thinking about maybe getting an iPad Pro. But now the new 2018, I guess, iPad, the standard one, which is about half the price of the iPad Pro, is now, it has pencil capability. The iPad, you can use the iPad Pencil. So, and it's pretty, I mean, there's some, obviously, the Pro's a little better in some respects, but so again, I keep saying this, but I'm gonna try to do more digital stuff. You know, as far as comics, I mean, again, I work. You know, a lot of the stuff I do is in Illustrator, and I do digital. You know, probably more than I do traditionally, but just not with the comics so much for whatever reason. So there's that, and then the other one was you were talking about, Mike, just earlier about how. You know, if you don't kind of challenge yourself or whatever, or I forgot what led into that, but you said you just kind of find yourself on Facebook and everything. And earlier, I don't know if he's still in the chat, he was earlier, Samurai Ox was talking about how he might go offline for April, and then, you know, get work on getting his stuff done. And I've seen people that do that. I know Kevin Cross did that once and everything. And I definitely see that can be helpful for me. I kind of have the opposite problem where I kind of have to force myself to go online and post and stuff. And since in my YouTube channel sort of got a little bit of momentum now, I definitely want to keep that going. So I don't know if I could do that, but I definitely see that as a very good thing, just to kind of, especially if you find yourself on there more often than that, kind of disengaging and just take some time working on your stuff. So
yeah, I also just have to insert this because while we're talking about like kind of challenges and stuff, it's like I realize like I don't want to do another video for today. So I'm on day 77 of the 100 Days Comics, and I will probably just post this on my feed as well, just as day 77. So that's sounding really attractive to me now because I'm like I'm getting sick of doing videos. But one thing that's definitely come out of that, like Mike was talking about, it's like the fact that I haven't had a day off, like the work itself is like, I've built a habit of working daily on comics anyway, but it's funny how much this is like reinvigorated, like the idea of like really 30 minutes is a joke. Like it's easy to make 30 minutes. You can make 30 minutes a day. And so like, and you know, there was a point, especially the midway point, and I think, Mike, you were the one who warned me about that. But it's like midway point through the 100 Days Challenge just felt like just there were a couple days there where I was like, really? You know, because I would like record with my band or do something that took a day, and I'd get home at like 1 in the morning and be like, do I want to do comics right now? You know, but it's like the 100s Challenge forced me to do it. And that, just having to overcome that, now it's like I feel like probably I might just go straight into the next 100 days, you know, and just minimize the videos, like meaning like maybe the videos are once a week with like really quick check-ins, like today I did this, boom, you know. And I think that are interesting too, because one of the things I feel bad about with the challenge now is I feel, you know, there are days where I just do a minute update because I'm just like, I don't want to do a video. I just want to do the comics and go to bed, you know?
And that's totally fine. That's all. I mean, you don't even technically need to do that if you're putting in your time. But yeah, I mean, if that's all you can do, that's fine. I mean, I do like that idea of even if you can just go on camera for a minute and a half and just give your update. I mean, I think that helps, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, it's fun, but I feel like I think if I tackle it a second time, like especially if it's directly after, I'll use Instagram as my daily and just do a photo, and then I'll use like a collection of the week for like YouTube, so I can be like, on this day I did this, and that way it's like it allows me to do longer videos because I can afford one day of like slow upload times, you know.
Yeah, and I think that I would probably do that myself if I do the challenge again. Yeah. Because some of the things, like I know I follow. I mean, a lot. There's when you are putting those videos out all the time. Sometimes like it's helpful if you do it like once a week, because then you can take a little more time with like your thumbnails and things like that. Because one of the issues, like when you post, I mean, because you don't have time to do all these custom thumbnails and things, or put topics into the video. So sometimes it's hard to know which one I've already seen, you know, or that type of thing. So, but you have to make some sacrifices when you just don't have the time. You can't just do everything, you know.
Yeah, for
but
sure.
I think weekly videos that you could, you know, do a nice thumbnail, you could cover, put a topic in the description and things like that. And I think that would also help as far as, you know, with your YouTube channel and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, and weaving a narrative into it would be nice, because I do notice there's like broader arcs that I could probably touch on like more if I had like one time a week where I really sat down, talked directly to the camera, and then just showed like process videos throughout the week, you know, like a collection of that. So I think that's the way to go. But like the cool thing is, tying into what Mike was saying, it's like because of taking on this challenge, it does make me a little more fearless about the idea of approaching another challenge or whatever. And at this point, I think I talked before we recorded, like I have some ideas that are starting to come up because I'm in the latter half of the challenge where I'm like, well, maybe I should do this, and maybe I should do this. And right now I'm struggling with trying to be realistic about, like, is this just my head, like, trying to find other things to, like, is this another form of resistance, you know, from, like, getting the thing I know I need to get done? Because I do feel like it's opened this creative gateway of, like, all these different possibilities. I don't know if you guys had that happen. Like,
oh, yeah. Definitely. It's like, there's got to be a term for it, like project creep or something. But like you'll be working on one thing that you're trying to get done, and then all of a sudden you feel like, oh, I've got a handle on this. I got to add something else now. And I feel like it must be some kind of resistance or I don't know, something not good, because it does tend to happen to me quite a bit, and I'm trying to learn to recognize it a little bit more. Because sometimes it's a good thing to do maybe a smaller project or to do another side project, but a lot of the times maybe it's not, you know. One of the main reasons I'm doing this small 16-page comic is that I talked to a lot of people that I trust and value their opinions, and everyone pretty much agreed that this is a good idea to do before finishing Space Cat, because Space Cat is a much longer, more involved kind of thing, and I do need to start getting more work out to show people like, hey, look, I really can do this thing. Like, I don't want you to have to wait so long to see that, you know, but to also have work that I could get feedback too, you know. That's not to say that it's like, oh yeah, I'm amazing. That's not it at all. Like, I need to start shipping stuff out for people to look at, and I would rather do something really short that I can ship out, you know, by this summer or by the end of spring, you know, compared to like waiting the whole year before I get a complete issue of something done. And, you know, like, so that was a smart move to do something like that, to do a shorter thing. But I've had other instances like The Legend of Space Cat, where it was like, oh, I'm not going to do this graphic novel that I'm working on. I'm going to do something shorter, like a webcomic, and then the webcomic exploded and turned into something that it's its own complete story now. So there can be kind of negatives and positives. I think you just got to kind of really give it a critical look, I think, before determining whether to move forward with it or not. Because I agree. I think it can be a form of resistance. Because I actually sorry, a little tributary here, but there was a person who did the 100 days. I think it was last year, and I actually got into a hangout. I think it was a hangout. I know it was a personal, like a conversation that I had with them. I forgot how it was, but they were having a similar issue, and I came up with this term that I call the grass is greener syndrome, where the way that I explained it was like, you know, making comics is hard. Doing any kind of creative project is hard. But the beginning is always easy. That's when everything's bright and shiny and there's a million possibilities of what it can be, you know, because you don't have any rules set down yet. You don't have any structure. You don't have anything established. And so everything goes. You can have your giant space monkey robot fighting the tentacle monsters from whatever. And it all makes sense because nothing has to make sense right now, you know. But then it's like the further along you get on a project, now all of a sudden you got a lot of restrictions because you have a structure in place. You have a story you're trying to tell, and it becomes harder because now it's not just settling on the characters and the story. Now you need to capture a moment. You need to capture an emotion, an expression, something that's difficult. And it seems that it's always at those times when it's like, well, I could do this and it's really hard. Or, oh, this other idea. Oh, and I should do this one because it's coming more naturally. It's coming more easily. So therefore, obviously, it's better, right? And it's like you forget that that's how the first one started too. You know?
Well, I keep thinking, like, you know, like for what I do, it's like, imagine if like Craig Thompson had like done like 1 million comics instead of just devoted himself to blankets. It's like, you know, if you look, like anybody, like you may be critical of Craig Thompson. I know there's cartoonists that aren't really big fans, but if you look at blankets, that's like a substantial piece of art.
Yeah.
And it's like, and it's thick. I mean, that's a big graphic novel. And it's like, that would not have happened had there been like, and then I'm going to do this short comic. And then, you know, like, and, you know, like, I think from what I've seen, he seems like a relatively quicker cartoonist. And he's got like this really cool, like kind of dry brush style that probably goes a little faster. But then it's like, you know, I just don't know if like blankets just happens without dedication. It's like, you know, building a house and you get halfway through the structure and you're like, no, I'm going to build a tent. It's like, no, you got to, like, if you start the house, you're going to have to finish it. And like, for me, at least, that's what I'm reminding myself of, because I have ambitions to make something big. And it's like, I have a really short period of time to live in, you know, compared to my production rate in comics. So it's like, you know, I think that I really do need to at least get at a really good pausing point. Like where you're at, that's a perfect time to make a 15-page comic or a 16-page comic. Because you've completed a project, you're between projects, you haven't tackled the monster yet, you know?
Yeah.
But I think once you gear up and you start doing page 1 of Space Cat, that should be your full-time job for a while.
Yeah, that's gonna be it.
Yeah, I don't know. How do you feel about that, Scott? I don't know. It's weird. To me, I'm surprised how much I'm getting hit with that kind of thinking at like the latter half of the 100 days. Like maybe I should. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm kind of in a similar situation because sort of on a whim, I mean, literally March 1st, I decided, you know what, I'm going to do the March of Robots challenge. So, but I'm happy I'm doing it because it's like giving me a chance to like post every day, because that's another one of my big problems is just not you know, posting all the time. So now that I have something to post, then I, you know, that's cool. Then it's probably going to like drop off once I finish that challenge. But so I decided I was going to do the March of Robots challenge while doing my comic book, while doing this other stuff, and then other things pop up like, oh, you're gonna be doing your first art exhibit. You've got Phoenix Comic-Con coming up. You've got, you know, all this other stuff, and it's just like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? You know. But yeah, so I took on that challenge, and then I also decided to do. I guess we could put it off, but you know. Marshall and I decided to do the Take Me 2 Liter Tuesday, which that's only once a week, but it still involves videos and all that kind of stuff. So, and that's another thing is, you know, one of my main things that I try to do, because I don't want to be lax about it while there's some momentum, is, you know, constantly post videos on YouTube. And so anytime you can take one thing that you're doing and pull double or triple or quadruple duty on that thing. So if I do the challenge where I can post it online, I can make a video. Plus I'm filming every single one of these March of Robots things I do, because I do those quick blueprint drawings. They're like 15 minutes, and just so anytime I need a topic to talk about and I need something interesting on screen, now I'm going to have 31 drawings that I can pull from. You know, that I'll speed up, and then there's like 3 different things there off of one challenge that I'm, you know, benefiting from. So, you know, try to think of it that way. If you can find ways to, you know, to kind of, you know, what's the term I'm looking for? Not multiplier efforts. There's a term of, I don't know, doubling or tripling, whatever. Anyway, I guess that works too. But anyway, so when I take on a project, I try to think, well, what if while I'm doing this, if I turn on the camera, then there's a video, or whatever else. If there's ways, can I make a print of this while, instead of just sharing it, something I can make a print of, because a lot of those robot drawings, the ones that I really do like, I've made like postcard prints from them, so there's all that kind of stuff. I've got drawing to do my marker rendering videos. I'm not marker, but my marker comparison videos.
Yeah.
I like, this will be the design that I color. I'm always trying to think of how to repurpose artwork or whatever I'm doing, so it's just not, so I'm not, well, if you're working on artwork, you're not wasting your time no matter what you're doing, but there's ways to, that you're putting in.
Yeah,
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think that ties into kind of what I'm struggling with on this project, which is and don't get me wrong, like, this isn't a criticism of that method, because I agree with it like wholeheartedly. But like what I'm working on, like right now I'm at this point, and I've talked about this, where it's like, this is kind of the thing I want to get out. Like, this is the thing that I feel needs to get out. This is the thing that I feel like I'd love to go, like I want to go to conventions and push this thing. And like, I'm really convinced of that. But I also have this other part of me that's done t-shirt design, and like when I did that Monty Python print, it was such a weird experience to go back to making, like spending maybe a week on something and then getting like instant gratification out of it. Where it's like, I put it online, people give it a thumbs up. I go to a gallery show, I get to meet somebody I really like. I get a pat on the back, like an attaboy, like that's great. And I get a portfolio piece, and it's all like 1 to 2 weeks of work, And it's like, to me, like, what I think I'm struggling with now is like, there's this thing that I'm working on now that I think if it's gonna have success, it's gonna be a slow build. And it's definitely, to be impressive, it's got to be a book, and it's got to be a book I hand to people that's fairly fat book. And I think I struggle with that. I struggle with the fact that I kind of want that instant gratification. I want the attaboy. I want like everybody to love it. But like, how can I expect that when a book like this really only works in a long form? So it's like this big struggle between what I'm putting in now, which like, if I put up this on Instagram, like, hey, I penciled the panel, I'll get a few likes. If I put up like a finished illustration, I get many more likes and more potential of followers, So it's like, it's this weird, it's this juggling act of like, I don't know, like how much of that desire to kind of get that instant thing out is good for the work, which is weird. The work I'm working on. I don't know, like it's a struggle for me. And I'm sure like Mike, you were just describing that kind of balance with Space Cat, where it's like this massive thing, that's the thing you want to do, but it's like, that's a huge amount of time.
Yeah.
And it's like, how much can you wait for people and expect people to be patient with it and the build of it? I don't know, it's just a weird, for me at least, that I think that is, now that we're talking about it, I think that is what's behind like my little ideas that have all popped up around day 77, because I'm close to the end of this thing. So I think my brain's giving me excuses to like, when you're done with this, then you can go off and do something that gives quicker fulfillment.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. For me, I think that's what's behind it. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, yeah, it makes total sense. But, at least you'll be done with it, though, so it won't be like a distraction. It would be just the next thing that you're doing. So that's better. For sure, yeah. I mean, definitely the 100 days are going to happen regardless. But I think I really need to just see this thing through and actually finish it. Rather, because that was the problem on the first graphic novel I worked on, was just like, it took like 10 times as long because I was taking freelance, And
I don't know. To me, it's like that's the whole reason I took full-time work was so I could, like, this could be the thing I do when I get home. You know? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. So Holly says, I think having multiple projects has its pros and cons. I feel really creative when I have the ability to switch between things, but the backlash is ruining schedules. Yeah, I mean, I think part of it's like a sort of a personal thing, just how you work. But like, I know I don't think I was going to say compare myself to Josh, but you know, he's kind of only working on more or less. I mean, he works on the little things on basically one art project. I don't know that I could do that, but he also does his music and he does different things. But I would get, if I was just working on one art project and that was it, I would get very bored. So, but some people aren't like that. So I guess you got to find out what works for you. I think that's the biggest thing, because a lot of people are doing things that don't work for them and they continue to do it. So if you find that you work better switching from one thing to another, like myself, or it sounds like Holly, well, definitely Holly, I mean, it's in her videos, so she's got animations and then 2 comic books and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, you just kind of, I think you have to find out what's working for you.
Yeah, for sure. And like, it is different for everyone. I think I feel inspired because I know this guy who literally finished a 300-page comic in like a year and a half. But like, that's literally all he did for a year and a half, you know? And that's how that happened. It didn't just happen, you know?
Totally.
So that to me is like, that's kind of the reality of what I'm looking at, where I'm like, I think I'm kind of along the lines of what Mike, what you're saying about spending 8 hours a day. I'm just like assessing this thing. And I'm like, if I want this to come out, it takes me a long time anyway. And so if I'm not dedicating all my free time, like my art time, that's, you know, and I need sanity projects, like, you know, like the music is a total sanity project, you know.
Sure.
But at the same time, if I'm not spending my art time on this, it's just going to mean more delays, you know.
Yeah.
And it's like, to me, thinking about it, I don't want delays on this. There's already enough delays. You know, I don't know. Yeah. It's interesting though, because it's like, I feel like it does wrap into what you're talking about going full out. And I think it's the same if you're going to diversify, go full out, you know? Like Scott, you have a really good output. You always are, I think, a little self-critical of your turnout, but you're on issue 4.
Yeah, I mean, look how long I've been doing it. But I don't, I say that more for, you know, I guess other people that are watching me, because it takes so long. Because for me, I mean, I'm okay kind of with the pace, because I can't just work on Young and the Dead. If I could, then it would be done out a lot faster. But it's not financially, you know, viable for me to do that. It's a passion project for me, so I have to work on it when I have the time. And like I said, I mean, it's not my only passion project. There's things with like just Serkworks as a company and designing prints and doing and coming up with products to sell and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I'm passionate about that too. So, you know, and that's why I don't promote the books and things as much as I probably could, because I just don't want to disappoint people who are like chomping at the bit for the next issue, because it's going to be a while. Now, when I finish it, when I've got a trade, and I mentioned this before, then I'll heavily promote it all the time, because I don't have to worry about people like, when's the next issue coming out type of thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, and that's going to be my dilemma when I have this first book done, because it's not going to be the completed story, you know. So like, I can just imagine people waiting for years, like, when's your next 100-page book coming out? You know, it's like, it might be a while. You know, that's going to be an uncomfortable, and especially because, you know, if like once you're at the point of having to promote that book, that's going to delay the next one.
Yeah. Yours is a little different, because you're actually sharing finished pages as you finish them, like as a webcomic, which I probably should start doing. But then again, that's kind of the reason why I haven't started, because I don't want to start and then because I've got a huge buffer that I could start doing that. But if I did, I'm just afraid that eventually catch up to me before, just at the rate I'm going. So, so that's one of the reasons why I haven't been sharing my stuff online. But
I think you should start serializing it. I mean, this is my own thing.
yeah, I should. I probably should.
You should. And then when you catch up, if people give you grief, just be like, dude, give me money on Patreon. You know,
Yeah.
like that's how you get it. Like, because otherwise, like, it's gonna get done when it gets done. Like, you know, there you go. Because you have enough to serialize for like half a year and update. Well, more than half a year. You could update every week and serialize for what? 2 years? Daily, like one update.
I'm sorry, I was looking at the chat. What was that, Josh?
Well, what I'm saying is, with the buffer you have, you could update once a week and probably serialize.
Oh yeah, that's how I would do it. Yeah, once a week, probably.
So you're not caught up by then, and like I said, it's a tool. You know, and I don't know. But
yeah, part of it again, and I really should, but part of it again is the just the amount of time to set that up, because there's so many other things that I've got on my plate. Like I want to redo my website, I want to start a mailing list, all this other stuff, and it's just like, is that a priority right now? But it's definitely, I mean, it's not something that I haven't thought about often. So,
yeah,
you know,
that's the difficult thing. There's so many things, like, you know, like some of the things that have come up in my head are like things I'd really like to do, like on this day, and then I'm like, well, but I have to prioritize. Like, is this going to cut into the time that it takes to get this thing done? You know, I don't know. It's tough, man.
Yeah, I noticed. I see Gazbot's in the chat, and if I remember correctly, Mike, I think Gazbot did sort of what you're doing now, where he did I think he did it like a week as a pro.
Yeah, actually,
so
that's exactly where I got the idea from, and I mixed up. He did 2 separate challenges. He had a hardcore week, which was actually just kind of, he had a bunch of stuff to do. It wasn't necessarily all focused on comic work. And then he had the my week as a comic artist pro, something like that. And I actually mixed them up. So I already made like my title card and everything, and I was calling it hardcore week. And but then I cleared that up. But yeah, totally inspired by him and doing that, because he learned a lot from that experience. And I actually talked to him about this like right before I was about to do it. And his advice was to be a shark. And I guess what he meant by that is that sharks, at least most of the breeds of sharks, they have to kind of keep swimming to breathe. They can't really stop. So that was like his kind of words of wisdom going into it, was to just, you know, nose to the grindstone, set like a goal, like if that's a page or however many panels or whatever, and just sit down and do it until it's done, you know, don't stop. And so I've got a little illustration that I've done for the title card that's in the theme of a shark. So I'm actually thinking about calling it Shark Week.
Well, I'm glad you clarified that, because there's so many, when you say be a shark, there's so many different ways you can interpret that.
Right, yeah.
But keep swimming. That makes a lot of sense.
Yep. Run outside, eat all your neighbors.
Yeah, devour all your competition.
Yeah.
I think that's good advice. And like to me, like there's this extra bit that I've added for myself with like the 100 days challenge, and that's why I haven't just done the minimum of 30 minutes most days, because generally I think there's been 2 days where I haven't been able to hit it, but every day I have to do at least a panel, and that's penciling a panel or inking a panel, and I literally don't allow myself to go to bed till I have that panel done. And that, like, there's little tricks, and I noticed Kevin mentioned it on like one of his, but this is definitely a trick I use too, which is like, I'll just put on a really interesting podcast to where it's like, I want to hear the end, or like I want to hear like Radiolab's great. Like, it's like that right there is easily like 30 or 40 minutes of just like getting me through, you know, because it's like, I want to hear what happens next, or put on a really cool documentary. But like, definitely I wouldn't want to set a time limit for myself, because I find like 30 minutes is not really enough time to even get warmed up, to be honest, you know?
Yeah.
It's just not a lot of time. Like, how long has this gone so far? Like,
I think we probably got another maybe 10 minutes before we hit our, you know, kind of hour and a half that we like to hit.
Yeah, so this is an hour and a half, and I finally like started to finish a panel, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like, to me, like if I clocked out at 30 minutes, I would have maybe gotten like the contour on lines done on my image and none of the shading. And so that would mean like maybe it would take like three days to get a panel done. That's a terrible page rate, you know? Like to me, like just a day's worth of work getting one panel done is really slow. So like, what am I gonna do if like that takes 3 days, you know? Then it's more than 2 weeks to get, you know what I mean? Like it just mathematically means like it would take me, you know, hell, I don't want to do all the math, but it would probably take me about a month to finish a page, and that's not a really good page rate, you know? I need to be at least minimum like done penciling a page in a week and inking a page in a week, you know? Like that's already really slow. So it's like that would have to be the minimum of what I can meet. And like, so I think that's really good, like what he's saying about being a shark, because it's like you gotta set whatever it is. You know, if it's like you're gonna finish a page a day, then like that's your goal. And you pencil a page in a day, ink a page in a day. Maybe you try penciling and inking a page in a day, and then in that case, what do you have to do to make that happen? Like your style has to be like do the Jim Lee tricks, you know, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Where it's like you just maybe can't labor every panel. Maybe one panel's the big money shot, and then the next is like, you know, more gestural, and you compose your page. Look at Mignola. I mean, for that, Mignola's brilliant at that. And not that any of his pages are simple, but he's really good at coming up with ways to simplify the execution when it comes to the final part.
Yeah. His style's a lot like it's almost painterly in that he's sort of blocking in the initial like lighting, you know, like a painter would take a Mike Mignola and that would be like the first fourth of like the of what the painting would actually be, but he does it in a way that it works and it's complete, you know.
Yeah, and it doesn't hurt that he has Dave Stewart doing colors for him.
Sure.
But I mean, it's brilliant. It's brilliant the way he's executing it, and like that kind of style, I could imagine if you dedicated like, you know, eight hours a day, like you could knock that, you know.
Yeah,
maybe not as well as Mike Mignola, you know, but it's an approach, you know.
Yeah. That is the major goal, is to, you know, and I'm doing it with this comic too. That's a short comic. So I'm hoping that I can knock out a page, and I'm telling myself, you know, what's the worst that could happen? I finish a page and it's super shitty and I don't like it and I don't want it to be in the comic. Fine. Pull out another piece of paper and do it again and better, you know, like there's nothing to lose with trying this, you know, and really just trying to push myself to my limits to see, can I finish a page in a day? And if I can, what does that look like? Is it acceptable, or is it really messy and sloppy? And do I need to slow down and maybe take some more time? Or, you know, I want to start taking notes too. So I'm going to have a little notepad next to me the whole time where I'm like, you know, recording, like, where am I getting stuck? That's what I'm most concerned about, is like, where am I getting stuck? And what's the deal? Am I just psyching myself out, or is this genuinely like something that I should work on? You know, is it the shoulder or something with perspective or some storytelling thing? What is it, you know, so that I can work on that some other time, you know? Because I feel like sometimes when I get hung up when I'm working on a comic, that'll be that time that I'll get distracted. Like, oh, I'm having trouble with perspective. Well, I guess I won't work on this page today. I'll go and study perspective all day, which is fine, I guess, you know, to a certain point. But when you're trying to finish work and get serious about using your time wisely and becoming a professional, like, you have to kind of know when it's time to work and when it's time to study, you know, and sometimes you don't have time to study. You have to get the work done. So a lot of this is going to be, you know, forcing myself to that, to consider that too. Maybe it doesn't turn out great, but maybe that's what I could do in the time that I had.
Yeah, and the other thing is just like tricks, you know, like the t-shirt industry. To me, like, to be able to make a living doing that for a long time, I had to really figure out, because like generally, like, and I'm sure other people made more in shirts, but for a while there, like the industry standard was like $250 to $500 per design. And this is like 15 years ago, so that was a little different then. But still, that's not a ton of money if you really equate like what that equals hourly, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you'd have different shirt things where you get residuals, and maybe it would make you more money because it's like a long-term bid, It's kind of more like making a book, where it's like if the book's a bestseller, then you're getting that flat, but you're getting some really nice residuals for like the rest of your life, which is great. But anyhow, so to get that kind of thing and be able to make a living at it, you really had to be like, okay, I have 4 hours to make this shirt design, and that's it. Anything beyond 4 hours, like I'm losing money, And so like you have to come up with ways to how do you make a quality design that has like a crowd scene or something that is only going to take me 4 hours. You come up with cheats, just having that time limit. Same with like editorial, where it's like, okay, I have to illustrate like a crowd. Like, how am I going to illustrate like a crowd of like 500 people in like, an hour or two to make this worthwhile to do? And so it's like, I think just having that, like setting a limit and really trying to come up with ways like the perspective you were talking about struggling with, maybe you just redraw it in a different perspective that's easier to tackle.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because that's actually what I've decided to do right now. As I've been struggling with this, I'm just going to tilt it in a different way that makes it easier for me. But
yeah, I mean, maybe that foreshorten the arm gets less foreshortened, and then you can nail it,
Yeah.
Because and like I'm sure Jim Lee does the same thing, where he's just like, this is a pain in the ass. I'm just going to try it with the head tilted this way instead. I mean, I'm sure as you get better at it, that becomes less and less of the thing. But there's that too, like Scott, like you were saying, it's like, like at this point you could probably look at stuff on your own page. Same with me, I can say it too. It's like I can look at this page and find a million things I could improve upon, but that's going to cut into my time tomorrow, Yeah.
There's another.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say there was another comment by Holly saying that she has a wait, hold on, let me find the comment. I have the one background per page rule where you don't need to force yourself to map out perspective on every panel. And then she goes on from there. But yeah, I mean, we were talking about that earlier with Jim Lee, where, he creates one dynamite panel, and really that's kind of all you need. I mean, if you establish, usually when you do your establishing shot, you take that perspective into consideration and everything like that. But if you've got one awesome panel on your per page, most people are going to look at that and go, "Oh, that's awesome." And then if you've just got like talking heads or something that's not as dynamic, and once you establish that, like, I mean, I got tons of panels where you don't see any background in it,
Yeah.
Plus, when you're close up on stuff, you can draw stuff in the background, and you don't have to worry so much as where perspective is, because you don't actually see where all the lines are coming from and everything like that. So there's some cheats there and stuff. But I think if you do have one awesome panel, and I probably should take that advice, and because I'm not thinking about that when I do my designs. But if I start to think about that, I think that's very helpful. So.
Yeah, I think like even the page I'm working on right now literally has 2 shots that are facing upward. So it's just showing the sky, which is a much easier way to draw like a plane passing over. And then it's like a long shot that's a little higher up, that's a little more in perspective, that required a little bit more mapping out. And then another close-up that's a little more detailed but easier to draw because the perspective is more basic 2-point, So it's like that, that is a really good idea of like, if you tackle like, or if you look at, pages in my story too, there's scenes where it looks like I'm doing a lot of background, but really it's just a flat ground with a flat background. And then there might be one shot that really gets into the perspective of the room they're in or something, You don't have to like kill it with perspective on every single panel, unless that's your art style. And then in that case, maybe it's like you simplify your figures, It kind of depends. Although I have that problem of overkilling every panel. And that's kind of the way I'm trying to do this comic. So we'll see. We'll see if it works. you know. But I think that, like, just looking at your style, Mike, like, I think that you have enough knowledge of, like, of perspective and of anatomy and stuff to where, you know, if you do decide to simplify a panel, it's not going to be a cop-out. It's going to be a conscious, intentional decision, which I think is the big thing, you know, with art. It's like, you know, if you're going to hide a foot, don't be hiding the foot because you can't draw a foot.
Right. Yeah.
Because if all your drawings hide feet, then, like, people are going to start going, that's weird that there's always rocks in front of this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like doing a lot of stuff with forced perspective too, and I feel like sometimes I can pull it off a lot better if I'm just not doing it technically correct. Like, it just has a different kind of feel to it, but then it's a little sloppier. And so, at least for me, one of my missions is to try to tighten that up so that I could do some more freehand perspective, but have it be a little tighter so it doesn't look so wonky and crazy.
Yeah, it's so funny. I mean, perspective's not one of my strengths either. And, like, when I lived in Portland, there's this guy, David Chelsea, that I used to hang out with, and he's written, like, books on perspective.
Hey, I read one of his books on perspective.
Yeah, and so, like, I'd go to his house and I'd be like, yeah, I drew this building in perspective, and he'd be like, cool, here's a globe I did a painting on, because it's, like, weird, like, level of perspective that only, like, 3 people in the world know how to do. And I'm like, okay, I suck. Like, but it was interesting because even he had, like, cheats and different struggles, and, like, you know, like, would pick his battles, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's, you know, I don't know. It's one of those things of, like, everybody's got their mastery, you know? And if you don't have the thing you've mastered, then that's where, like, earlier in our discussion where you start picking those battles, like, you're like, this is my panel where I do this thing, you know? I think Scott, like, has an incredible knowledge of perspective. At least sure as hell would fool me.
I should be. I mean, the thing is, I'm lazy about it. I don't really like to do perspective. So if I need to, I can. But I mean, I see a lot of flaws in my perspective sometimes too, because I'm just not, you know, putting in the effort as much as I should. But I should be good at perspective, because my first job was working, you know, doing architectural renderings and things. But it's just not something that's easy. So yeah, I don't know that I'm the best at it, but you know, yeah, I try, I guess.
You definitely, like, in your establishing shots in that comic are like some of those I look at and I'm like, okay, I spend a lot of time on, like, inking and hatching and stuff like that, but like that page would have killed me, you know. So there's a lot of that. So yeah. And then Mike, like, same thing. Like, in Julie Jupiter, it's just like some of the crazy shots you were doing with perspective. I was just like, I would, like, shoot myself doing that page. It's just crazy.
Well,
yeah, I don't know, Josh. I mean, I don't want it to be a big, you know, pat on the back for everyone, but I mean, it's like, yeah, I mean, the amount of time you spend and the amount of, you know, rendering you do and all that kind of stuff. I think perspective and all that other stuff. I mean, I think that'd be a cakewalk for you.
Well, I doubt it, but, you know, actually, let's just stop complimenting each other, because it's just
it's a little uncomfortable. But yeah.
You're awesome. No, you're awesome. So
yeah, we can.
Suck. Like, what do I suck at? No, I don't know. Like, I do want to kind of get back to this. So Mike, like, what's your aim of attack? Have you started the challenge already?
No, not yet. Like, we were kind of talking a little bit before the show. I've been having some kind of health issues, and so I actually had to stop the challenge for a few weeks, and I'm probably going to be starting it again this coming Monday, because this coming Monday is actually the start of the next quarter. It'll be the second quarter of the year, so I thought that's a great time to start it, because this whole first quarter was going so well up until the health issues started, and so I kind of wanted to just get back into it as soon as possible. And I figured, hey, you know what, this is the next closest date, so yeah, Monday, if all goes well, that'll be the start of it. And I'm debating whether I actually broadcast it like in real time, because honestly, I'm more focused on just learning the lessons and doing what it is that I got to do. So if I have time to make video, I'm going to maybe do like an end of the day log kind of thing. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to also take the time to upload it every day. But at some point, I hope to collect, all of those and kind of make at least a video that recaps the experience and maybe some thoughts afterwards and whether I'm going to continue doing that or not. So
That's awesome.
I'll be starting on Monday, but you might not see it until 2019 or something. We'll see. Hopefully earlier than that.
I think that's a good idea. Just do a little log for yourself, and then when you're through it, or when you come to an epiphany or something, then you can, like, at least that's one thing I've learned from the 100 days is like, for me, like the daily thing, although it's a mix, because I'm also, and maybe you're going through this too, considering whether to track it daily, there is this momentum that I feel I've built where it's like, I'm going to get a video done every day. And I managed to find the time to do it just by the sheer necessity of needing to do it. Yeah. So I always wonder, if I go to a week, is that going to be harder to manage than the dailies?
I found that it was actually, because I mean, and it's different for everybody, but for me, then it was like, that was my whole weekend, was editing that one video. And that was like, and then I didn't have a chance to actually rest and recover because it was taking up a lot of extra time. But I don't know, there's some other people that have done the challenge that found that to be way easier. And I guess it depends on how you're editing and putting the videos and stuff together too.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I don't know. Scott, would you find it easier to do like weekly or daily?
Weekly or daily, what? I was paying attention to chat and also, so it was, sorry. I shouldn't be responding to that. I should, it's just like.
Well, videos, like for videos.
Oh, videos. Oh, for.
Like if you slow down on your production of videos and just do like, say, one a week.
I would say now that I've done it, I think I would recommend that if you're first going to take the challenge, go for it. Go do the daily videos. I've done the daily videos twice. I don't know that I would do daily videos again, because also, like, I think Holly found that out when she started doing her second round of 100 Days of Making Comics, where, because she's got a big audience and they're expecting different kinds of videos, and when all your videos are taken, you're doing all that for the 100 days, it can affect sort of what people want to see on your channel, your channel, and things like that. I think if you're just starting off and you're trying to, build an audience, it's really good. But it's a lot for somebody to keep track of and everything. So I found that when I started doing that second round, because I was definitely putting out just weekly videos, not the 100 Days of Making Comics before that, or twice a week or whatever. And when I started doing daily, they didn't get as many views, even though collectively they were, because there were more of them. So, you can, figure out what kind of works best for you. But I think just the fact that the videos take a lot of time also away from creating comics. I think after you've done it once, because I do recommend just do it once, because you just learn a lot from being able to post and do that every day. And I just think it's not technically required as part of the challenge, but I think it really helps. But then after that, I like the idea of weekly updates after that. So. Yeah,
I'm torn, because I'm split, because I do see that, like, if I do it, like, at least for me, if I do weekly, I might actually struggle more with getting them out. Whereas like doing daily, I'm not being precious. I just have to get it out. Yeah. So I don't know. It's a weird, like, it'll be interesting if I decide to do weekly. I'll try to kind of chart that too. Like, is this a better way to attack the 100 days, or is it better to like just just straight up do one a day and just kind of let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah, it's easier to forget to do the weekly video too, because there's so much time that passes between the last one that you did. But They're kind of fun too. I think if you do like an episode that's just sort of like a recap thing instead of like collecting every video from every day, that might be a little easier to manage. But you just got to take good notes so that you can remember what actually happened during the week. I had that problem when I was doing weekly videos. I would gear up the camera and I'd be all excited, and then I'd be like, what did I do this week?
Yeah, sometimes it's just the uploading is the issue. That's why a lot of people do, film the videos every day, just not update them, or and plus you don't have to edit once every single day. You just, not just the upload, but the edit's the big issue too. So if you just turn your camera on while you're working and just, explain what you're doing throughout the day, and then at the end you can dump it all in your editing program or whatever, and then edit it, and it saves a lot of time that way, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And video editing is easy. You just click a button that says edit, right? And just
yeah. That's like Photoshop. The Photoshop button's the same way.
They've got apps for that. Yep, you get different filters for different YouTubers. So you can put on the Jazza filter, or whatever.
You get the chimney filter, or the So
I personally like the perspective filter. That's
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
I want the Kim Jong-gi filter.
Right? Like that's one of the exceptions. Where it's like I was talking about how most artists they'll draw the incorrect line and kind of correct, and then I was like, that's the exact exception I was thinking of.
All right. Well, I mean, I think we've probably, I know we've reached our sort of hour and a half. So, and I think we covered a lot of ground. I think this is a good episode. I don't know if there's anything else you guys want to say to put a pin in the topic, or.
The only thing that I would add that I don't think I said already is, it's different for everybody, and just always keep that in mind. I know a lot of people, sometimes they'll hear advice, or they'll hear someone else's story or whatever, and immediately feel like, oh, I'm going to apply that to my life immediately. And sometimes you got to sit back and think for a second and just figure out what's best for you. I know this whole topic is kind of like, pushing yourself and going all hardcore and stuff, and that's different for everybody. Like your hardcore might actually be doing 30 minutes a day, a few years ago that was definitely my hardcore. I started the challenge because I wasn't doing anything at all. I was wasting a lot of time, and that 30 minutes was difficult. So just assess yourself. Don't push yourself to the point where you're burning yourself out, or you're climbing up a steep hill trying to do something that maybe is going to hurt more than it's going to help. Find whatever it is that you can go hardcore at and really push that. If you got 2 hours, then make it the best damn 2 hours out of your day, and do that. But if you don't have that kind of time, don't beat yourself up either. I think that's kind of an important thing to say when talking about stuff like this.
Yeah. And I was beginning it by doing the hardcore. So I agree, but there's this thing, and I forget where I heard it, but it was a statistic where it's people, and I think it was in regards to working out, but it's people tend to work to about 20% of their capacity when they say they're going to quit. And that's just a human thing. So I would say, yes, listen to Mike, don't beat yourself up, but if you get going and you have that voice in your head that's I'm too tired, I'm this is enough, I clock out, I did my 30 minutes. Are you really working to your full potential? And that's a really good question to ask yourself.
Oh yeah.
When attacking any challenge, are you really working to your full potential, or are you just wussing out? And so there's the mix between the two. If you're the personality that beats yourself up too much, listen to Mike. If you're the personality that's allowing yourself too many excuses, then really just question, am I being honest with myself? Or do I have 10% more that I can do? Can I do 10 more minutes? And when that's done, can I do another 10? Or will that be it?
Yeah.
I don't know. That'd be my bookend. So yeah. What about you, Scott? Anything?
No, I think you guys pretty much summed everything up. I mean, I don't really know if I have anything poignant to add to that. So, I mean, you guys said it very well. So, I don't know, Josh, where can everyone find you?
Yeah, so since this is my 100 days log off, I'm just going to show my progress.
Right.
So I penciled this last panel, and then I just started inks because it's Artcasters, so it always pushes me past that capacity to a capacity I didn't know I had, because I have great conversations with you guys. You can read my comic on Tapas.io by checking or just downloading the Tapas app and searching for Quarterly Stories. You can also check out quarterlystories.com. And actually, now that Scott mentioned purchasing stuff, you can also purchase my stuff by looking for Joshua Kemble on Society6 and on Threadless. And I have stores where you can buy cool T-shirts, like my awesome supporter buddy who picked up one.
Yeah, that's poor quality video, but that's the shirt right here. Check out the high quality one at the Society6, and that's a great message. Shut up and make stuff, or what is it? Or give up. I like that as a mantra. So
awesome. And then Mike, where can we find your stuff?
Right now, the best place to go is go to spacecatcomics.com. That'll take you to my store. I've actually got a sale going on now, some misprints of a print that I did. They're like $5 off what the normal price would be, so a little plug there. But from there, you can get to all my stuff. Instagram, Facebook. Instagram is probably the better place to go because I'll post everything on Instagram. Everything from sketchbook stuff to little doodles to random bits from my day to, finished pieces and stuff. So that tends to be the place that I go to the most for sure. And then obviously on YouTube, I'm about to maybe start uploading videos again soon. So
awesome.
Check out my channel.
Yeah, definitely miss your videos. So I'm looking forward to that.
The intro for this new series is awesome. That's all I'll say about it. It's funny.
Yeah.
Or it's really stupid. I don't know. If I make myself laugh, I assume other people are going to like it.
I remember the amount of effort and everything you put into your first round of 100 days of making comics. I mean, that was some really awesome stuff.
This is a little throwback to that. It's not as intense, but it's a little. We got some special effects. I got some help from my cat.
Awesome. So yeah, I usually say, you know where to find me because you're on my channel. But I did have something that I wanted to promote that I almost forgot about. If you are in the Phoenix area or you plan on being in the Phoenix area on April 6th or April, I think 20th, it's the first and third Friday, I'll have my first ever art exhibit. I will be exhibiting at the Cocoon Art Space. And if you're downtown Phoenix, if you know what Phoenix First Friday is, it's kind of like a big giant street fair and everything. But Cocoon Art Space, I think it's on the corner of Garfield and 5th Street. And I'll be in there, showing. I've got my prints, and I've got a bunch of other stuff and everything. So come by and say hi. And I will be posting on social media. If you follow me, I'll try to remember to put a link in this if I can. But I'll be posting about that on my various social media, so you'll know a little more about that. So I'm looking forward to that. It should be fun. I'm interested to do that because I haven't really done that type of thing before. So there's that. And and also I just wanted to give a shout out to everyone in the chat. Thanks everyone. And the cool thing about the chat is now it does record, YouTube does record the chat. So you can go back even after this thing, after it's not live anymore, you can still go back and read the chat and everything like that. So thanks everyone. And I think we did a little better job at responding. Sometimes we kind of ignore the chat, not on purpose. And sometimes they just chat amongst themselves anyway. So, but thanks everyone. So the way this whole thing works, as far as the Artcasters, we usually do it every single week. And it switches back and forth between Josh's channel and my channel. And if you want to know which channel we're going to be on, the best way to do that is subscribe to our mailing list, and we don't spam you or anything like that. We just usually at least 30 minutes ahead of time, we like to send out just an alert, just a link where you can find us, let you know that we're going to be going live. So sign up for that. And that's probably, I think that's it. Did I miss anything? Did I leave anything out?
Hardcore.
Yeah, everyone, if you're not subscribed to Mike's channel, subscribe because he does awesome videos, and he always has really interesting, introspective stuff to talk about as far as art goes. Well, you found that out just because he's on the show today. So, all right, everyone, thanks for joining us, and we will see you guys later.